Welcome to the INFOWARS Nightly News. It is Friday, January 23rd, 2015, and I'm Leanne McAdoo. Here's a look at tonight's top stories.
Tonight, the controversial responses to the death of the Saudi king. Then, experts call the latest ISIS video a fake. And a billionaire with 2 jet-setting nannies says your life is too extravagant. That's next on the INFOWARS Nightly News.
But on the surface, trendies all swarming around.
Well, not content with giving the third world toxic vaccines or pumping them full with GMOs, no, now Bill Gates is pushing for a cashless society. Now, he is promoting this digital currency for third world countries as a way to allow the poor to use their phones like credit cards, store their financial assets digitally instead of keeping hard currency at home. He says by 2030, 2 billion people who don't have a bank account today will be storing money and making payments with their phones. Now, he doesn't mention that a cashless society will enslave the poor into an electronic monetary system that they don't control. It's a system that will allow the governments and banks to confiscate money at will through taxes and bail-ins. And this is exactly what we saw happen in Greece. Banking customers there saw 10% of their accounts siphoned to pay off the banksters. Bank accounts were frozen and their accounts were just culled. And as Kit Daniels points out in his article, they wouldn't even need to wait for an economic crisis to loot digital bank accounts. With the cashless scheme that Gates is proposing, they could simply impose a tax and confiscate this money automatically. And confiscating digital currency, it's almost humane compared to what the elite really has planned for the rest of us. Harvard professor Margot Seltzer told attendees at the World Economic Forum in Davos that privacy was dead. And she warns that soon miniature mosquito drones will perpetually monitor individuals and they can forcibly extract DNA on behalf of the government and insurance companies. She said it's not a matter of if they're going to do this, but when. And a fellow Harvard academic warned that an era of genetic McCarthyism was on the way as a result of people's personal genetic information being available to governments via the internet. Obviously, the definition of McCarthyism being the practice of making unfair allegations or using unfair investigative techniques, especially in order to restrict dissent or political criticism. So she's saying that this is going to be ushering in a new era of genetic McCarthyism because of these mosquito drones flying around. They're going to be taking your DNA without your permission, of course. So these are things that the world leaders there at the World Economic Forum are talking about and discussing about things that are happening. Now, we reported yesterday that Google CEO Eric Schmidt told the Davos attendees that the World Wide Web would disappear as an external concept. And of course, what he's talking about is the introduction of an internet brain chip. He said it would be a part of your presence all the time. Imagine you'll walk into a room and the room is dynamic. And with your permission and all of that, you are interacting with the things that are going on in the room. And of course, as we know, Eric Schmidt is the one that famously said, well, if you don't want to be caught doing something, then maybe you shouldn't be doing it. So he's just quite the privacy advocate. And, you know, as he points out, with your permission, but I'm sure the hackers aren't going to be asking for your permission before they hack into your brain chip, or these mosquito drones aren't going to be asking for your permission before they take your biometric information back to the government. These people are sick. And just to show that these ideas are for the sheep and for the useless eating masses and not for the elites, this is what they're also talking about. Billionaire Jeff Green, he made some comments at Davos as well, and he said, the U.S. is facing a jobs crisis that's going to cause social unrest and radical politics. We've been hearing them talk about this a lot. Well, what he says is America's lifestyle expectations are far too high and need to be adjusted so we have less things and a smaller, better existence. Oh, he's so green. It sounds like he's just really worried about the environment. He's so concerned about us. He says we need to reinvent our whole system of life, right? Well, this is billionaire Green who flew his wife, his children, and 2 nannies into Davos on a private jet, and he's selling one of his homes for $195 million. But he's saying we need to lower our expectations and adjust our lifestyle, adjust our whole system of life. It's basically the same thing as when Obama told Africans that they can't have air conditioning. We can't all have air conditioning. It's just not green. So these people are clearly out of touch, just like the Clintons. The Clintons are out of touch. And no, I'm not talking about them claiming to be dead broke. Here, they are praising their personal friend, the late Saudi King Abdullah, for his humanitarian efforts. They say it in a statement, "We are grateful for his support of efforts for peace in the Middle East, our close economic cooperation, the kingdom's humanitarian efforts around the world, its contributions after the earthquake in Haiti, and of course his efforts to modernize Saudi Arabia's economy and education systems." And it goes on and on. King Abdullah was for decades the figurehead for a regime with an atrocious human rights records. The government treats women worse there than terrorists, worse than animals. The king even imprisoned 2 of his own daughters who have been under house arrest for the last 13 years. The authorities there routinely behead more people than ISIS. Women can, of course, be charged with terrorism simply for driving. But these are people that the Clintons want to praise. They just want to praise him because they're so humanitarian. And of course, people are all in an uproar as well in the UK because the British monarchy demanded that to fly the flags at half-mast to honor this Saudi dictator king. And of course, the tweets condemning this came in swiftly. They say Saudi Arabia banned women from driving and behead people for sorcery, and you are showing them respect. Are you insane? They say perhaps it could be a mark of respect for the poor souls that are beheaded and flogged on a regular basis. And last year, the Saudi regime put into effect a new law which allows the kingdom to prosecute as a terrorist anyone who demands reform, exposes corruption, or otherwise engages in dissent. So, of course, that goes toward women. It could be applied to women who attempt to drive or who maybe don't wear the appropriate headwear in public. Because during King Abdullah's reign, 15 schoolgirls were killed after religious police there refused to let them leave a burning building because they were not in Islamic dress. So here is this great humanitarian that everyone just wants to praise because he just did so much for the country. And The Guardian's Andrew Brown calls King Abdullah the embodiment of the wickedness of Saudi Arabia's regime. He says, women are beheaded in the street. Liberal thought is punishable by flogging. The young men it sent to fight in Afghanistan turned into al-Qaeda. The Sunni jihadis, whom Saudis have funded in Iraq and Syria, turned into ISIS. It has spread a poisonous form of Islam throughout Europe with its subsidies and corrupted Western politicians and businessmen with its culture of bribery. And the Saudis have always appealed to the worst forms of Western imperialism. Their contempt for other Muslims is as great as any American nationalists. And so, of course, that's just kind of flying in the face of what the Clintons are saying, that the kingdom has spread these humanitarian efforts around the world. Right, I guess they mean ISIS and al-Qaeda. But that is not all that the Saudis have been involved with.
This is the way for the families to get peace and the American people to know the truth
Sure.
about 9/11.
And I know you're not supposed to tell us everything that's in it, but when they use national security to hide crime, we have a responsibility. How much, I mean, you've talked about it before. I've talked to military people that have been involved in the House that have seen it. I mean, basically, it's that Saudi Arabia was running the operation.
Well, I would say this because it's already been actually Bob Graham, who helped write the 9/11 report. He actually said at the news conference that the Saudis were behind the 9/11 attack, and also that this would allow the families, if these 28 pages could be published, this would help the families in their lawsuit against the Saudi Arabian government for damages that were done to the American people on 9/11.
My God, what type of apology do we owe the Iraqi people for blaming them for this?
So the outpouring of support for King Abdullah are just once again proof that the Western government, Western leaders are hypocrites. They're perfectly content to tolerate and praise these type of dictatorships while putting sanctions against Russia or Iran and other, what we might call milder regimes. Now, the fate of the hostages who have been threatened with death under ISIS is unclear. Their deadline expired today. The militants had demanded $200 million for their release. Now, a tweet from a Twitter account that's linked to ISIS said the hostages had been killed because of Japan's choices, which I guess what they mean is by not offering to pay this $200 million ransom. And the tweet was on the same account that previously posted the countdown clock, and it warned that a new video was being sent to production. Now, experts are saying that this original ISIS ransom clip is faked. They say analysis says the video was shot using a green screen and a phony backdrop, and light is coming from two different angles. A breeze appears to blow, but there's no sand, which would, you would think would be obvious if you were in a desert. So here we have the lamestream media actually coming out and saying that this is fake. The media is having to point out how it clearly looks staged because, the propaganda is just a little too obvious for them to even ignore or to even try to lie about. People are just getting a little bit too smart to be continually lied to. And this is a good thing because ISIS has really been trying to spread this fear throughout the world. They've really been feeling themselves lately, thinking that they've been doing this excellent production and that they've been gaining steam and prestige and getting more support through all of their social media efforts. But now it seems that people have gotten a little bit of fear porn fatigue, and rather than cowering in fear, they are now turning these terrorists into the joke that they are. Japanese Twitter users aren't cowering in fear at these supposed terror threats. Instead, they're turning Jihadi John into an internet meme. Their memes contain ninjas, Japanese anime characters, Dr. Evil, bananas, and more. Now, Peter Payne, who is the owner of JList.com, it's an online store that sells Japanese goods, explained the hashtag's overall meaning. He said, "You can kill some of us, but Japan is a peaceful and happy land with fast internet, so go to hell." I think this is great because this is what we need to do. We need to transform our fear into empowerment. This is one of the tools of control that we've been saying and we know that they use to control us is fear. And this is something that we need to be able to free ourselves from, and transforming fear into humor is a great way to do that. Now, I'm not saying that the beheading videos are fake, but they're clearly staged. Now, perhaps one of the reasons why it looks like it's been produced in a studio in front of a green screen, we know ISIS has taken over at least 5 news stations, so we know they have production capabilities. Perhaps they want to hide their location, so they're doing it in front of the green screen. But nevertheless, the use of all of this green screen and production value has been questioned. People don't believe that these videos are real. And of course, this is not helping ISIS.
I'm Joe Biggs with INFOWARS.com. Now, an article was released today by the Daily Sheeple, and the headline is the ISIS Japanese beheading video green screened or what? People aren't buying it. Well, let's go ahead and take a look into this article. What they're saying so far is that they believe that this is a fake green screen video. And the main reason for that, if you look at the Japanese man who is on his knees to the left side, the shadow is on the inside of his neck. Then the other man to the left of him is on the exact same side. So that would show that there are 2 different suns in the sky, bringing in 2 different shadows. So that is something obviously pretty sketchy with that. But most people are thinking that, like I said, that this is just too far-fetched. You have a shadow going down. There's a light, it looks like, that's on the right side of the shoulder of the man, which makes the sun direction change. Also, the eyes of Johnny Jihad look a little odd as well, like they've been closed the entire time. And then when he turns sideways a bit, you can see a pixelated part of his man dress going down the side. So it's definitely something to look into, but most people are thinking it is a fake video.